And thank you to everyone for joining us today. As Sonia said, my name is Julian Brown. I'm Product Marketing Manager here. And in a moment, I'm going to be handing over to Ricardo Marquez, who will be handling the bulk of our training session. But before we do that, I'd like to share a little bit of context about, what's new in Lumu and all these updates that we're calling the next generation of compromise assessment. All right, so what we see these days is that a lot of cybersecurity stacks kind of look like this. You have your identity controls over here, you have your endpoint controls, you have your cloud controls, and you have perimeter controls. But the trouble is that all of these different controls and cyber solutions aren't connected to each other, so they're not speaking to each other. And this is basically causing a visibility gap that a lot of attacks can exploit so that they can pass through these controls. All right, so yeah, basically these attacks are evolving. And so we found that basically cybersecurity needs to evolve as well, and Lumu needs to evolve as well. So because of this, Lumu is not only collecting telemetry from the network anymore. We're now also collecting telemetry from endpoints, from identities, and from email. We're collecting all of this in real time, and we're doing processing in the cloud independently. We're not just taking alerts from these different controls, and we're alerting based on that. So you have 24/7 visibility over there. And you can also make sure that like all of this visibility is being seen across all the different areas where businesses operate, your on-premise environments, your public and private clouds, and your roaming devices. The advantage of this is that we can still see the same, we have the same quick deployment and the quick return on value, quick showing value quickly as we always have. But now we can follow basically that entire attack chain as it's moving across the network through endpoints to the cloud, back to the network as it happens. And it also allows us to give you faster and more precise response across these different points. Because Lumu isn't just actively monitoring and alerting, we are also responding. So basically with Lumu at the center here, you have your 24/7 detection and response, your network detection and response. But you also get to see what's happening at these different endpoints in your email security perimeter. And we also respond through those different points so that you can respond basically wherever the attack is happening. And this allows us really to just follow the entire chain a little bit more closely. And Ricardo will show that to us in a little while. Moving on, we have four different new types of detections that we want to share with you guys. The first will be anonymizers, then we have unusual login and login brute force and network brute force attacks. First of all, for the anonymizers, we have two different types of anonymizer attacks that we detect. The first is commercial VPNs. A lot of people will say, but these are benign. But not always. Very often an attacker, as you can see on the left of the screen here, will use a commercial VPN to obfuscate where he's attacking from so that people can't detect the malicious connection happening. We do also allow you to whitelist a certain commercial VPN if that's what you prefer, but most of the time you don't want an employee of yours to be using a commercial VPN like the ones that you always see sponsoring ads on YouTube. The other type of anonymizers that we detect are Tor networks. Much the same way, you have the attacker sitting on the right here. He's basically collecting data from the victim through the Tor network or doing command and control through the Tor network. So that's something you want to be aware of. And then the other three types of attacks that we have, login brute force, network brute force, and unusual login. Starting on the left here, I think we're all familiar with what a brute force attack is. It's basically a lot of different attacks trying to get into a certain account. So this is one of the new attacks that we can see. On the right, we have network brute force. This is not necessarily trying to get into an attack, into an account, but rather an attacker trying to, find open services, try to connect to a service or a certain port. And it's worth noting that sometimes this can happen because there's a misconfiguration between two services. And then on the third, we probably have the most malicious or the most worrying kind of incident that we now pick up, and that's unusual login incidents. And over here, you can basically see that there has been a successful login into a certain account, but usually it's also a very important account, like an administrator account or something that is, or an account with a lot of permissions. And that's being triggered based on different parameters, such as strange times or an account that doesn't get used a lot, or impossible travel, that kind of thing. All right, so those are the four new types of attacks that we're going to be covering. In a moment, I'm going to hand it over to Ricardo, but before I do, just a quick overview. The attack kill chain normally looks like this. The attacker starts by doing his reconnaissance on your network. They get in somehow, usually through phishing, some kind of delivery mechanism. They exploit vulnerabilities or gaps in visibility, and then they execute command and control to be able to move through the network, as in the case of lateral movement. And then finally, they achieve their means, which is usually exfiltration of data of some kind. So with that, we're going to be seeing this firsthand in a moment through the Lumu portal. I would like to hand over to Ricardo Marquez. Ricardo, are you ready to join us?
Hi,
There he
Julian.
is.
Thank you very much. How are you guys? Thank you for your time. It's nice to meet you. Julian, thank you for that introduction. Thank you for telling what we're doing at Lumu and all of these new things. So it's nice to meet you. My name is Ricardo Marquez. I'm a technical director for Lumu. And I want to start sharing those news, right? So, well, it's interesting, right, guys? Thank you for following up all of the time with what Lumu is delivering. And for our customers, I think that you're looking at these novelties, right? Lumu has been delivering the automatic compromise assessment that we do in a continuous form. This allows you to understand at any level of compromise that be touching on your security operations, and of course, defend immediately with blocking actions. And this delivers, these news are actually delivering more to that. So we remain very compromised with the data collection strategy that we have. So we provide options to our customers. We remove blind spots in the environment. And we're naturally expanding to getting this visibility into identity and endpoint and the rest of the environment. So the network will remain a core, right, at the strategy, and we're adding these cool new detections that we're gonna talk right now. So based on that, you can see the portal, the portal has been developed to provide a powerful solution that is yet easy to use. We're gonna show not the logic behind the backend of the solution, but we're gonna show how a technician can interact with the portion of detection and what's happening. And so we can understand these new detections, what's happening, how it's being handled, and how you can report that without additional work. So this is gonna be really cool. So we start here at the left, just a little bit of a navigation on the portal, just seeing a menu that is simple to use. We have the collection space here. This is basically the ship engine room. This talks about the different methods that we have to collect the metadata. For example, from gateways are able to collect DNS, you're able to even use our DNS resolvers. We have the virtual appliances that act as a point of collection and integration with environment. So we can receive syslog, we can integrate directly with firewalls, we can receive DNS data, we can receive different mechanisms of that metadata, including agents as well. So the agents support Windows platform, Linux, Mac, and Chrome OS. We have been tweaking this, and now we're really proud to offer this new capability of built-in response for Windows agents. So the Windows platform now has this autonomous capability to respond under configuration. So this is really cool. It helps you protect better for roaming agents, helps you deal with decision-making at speed, reducing latency, complementing EDR deployments. So this is really cool. So you have the different groups with different types of agents installed, of course, for different platforms, and you can enable this automatic response. Really easy to use. You just tweak here, you turn it on. We made it simple, we made it practical, and that goes a long way to extend your security capabilities. We also have the log forwarders. In the case you are unable to use a virtual appliance, we still provide a mechanism to integrate with the environment and move that metadata for our analytics activity, right? So really cool. With that, we're gonna move a little bit more towards now an overview of incidents and other aspects. So we use the metadata to be able to generate not only a real-time perception of what's happening in the environment, right? And to be able to tell you the developing conditions regarding security and your state of compromise. At a glance here, you can see really easy the number of incidents that are open, the number of entities affected in the environment, and labels. Labels is really interesting because labels help our customers to understand, to prioritize, and see how business relevant areas are being affected and impacted towards better decision makers. So this accelerates the understanding. Not only it accelerates the understanding, but allows to review and know about asset ownership and see what are the implications regarding any impact. So this is really cool. So this, instead of sitting just with the notion of alerts, it's telling you at a glance. You start here understanding immediately what matters, what's being resolved, right? The responded incidents, the new indicators of compromise included, the savings in operational time. You see the network activity against the classifications of different nature of type of threats. You see the endpoint distribution. So this allows you to move faster to understand even the techniques that the attackers are trying to use against your environment. So being fast is part of what we want to do. With Lumu, being simple, being streamlined is really relevant. So what is natural now is to move towards incident. How do we do that? We can go directly into details, right? And into details, I can already see that I have my incidents view here, and I can filter that properly. I can put this week, I was off this week. On the weekend, I was traveling. So when I'm in my incident view, this is where we're actually as understanding what is the outcome of that processing of that vast amount of metadata that we're collecting from your environment, right? And subjecting that data to the illumination process. So this allows us to spot only confirmed threat incidents and bring it to your attention and respond to them. So here we're providing everything that the technical staff needs to understand what is happening, what is the situation, what is the level of compromise, and with automated blocking response when configure integrations are performed, are done simply and orchestrated. Let's review this week data. So this is what I want to do. I was off on the weekend. I'm trying to understand this. So when we look at this, we're trying to spot any other type of situation. So let me go back here. And I know that I left during the weekend. So we can see incidents here. So on the February 23rd, so let me get back to 23rd because, and let me organize this by last event and date. So this becomes really easy for me, and I can go back to my timeline here. Okay. So sorry, I believe I click here. Here we go. Now I'm good. Sorry, I clicked twice there, and I didn't mean to. So February 23rd. So I left on the weekend, and when I go back here, I'm looking at a phishing incident. So I look already. This is always happening. You know that the first point of entry of any type of situation nowadays is email, because it's the app that we have most interaction with as users in general. And I can already see here that it's telling me about a phishing domain, specific weird domain here. So with that, I see that there's an affected endpoint, one malicious contact. We are summarizing this view, and it's telling me that it's from my label from the administrative sector or endpoints. I see that a marketing Z1 laptop has been touch resist. There is a Windows agent in that machine. The user was using Chrome, so it interacted with a specific phishing attempt. I don't like that. In this environment that we have automatic response enabled. This shows you how we can enact immediately to situations, but we have a progression to follow here. So I invite you to understand the chain of events that this unfolds. So, but we can see immediately that the first point of contact was a marketing laptop. This could be a roaming device. This could be within the corporation, right? And we orchestrated not only an automated response, but you can see here a built-in response. This is really cool. That is a feature that I was mentioning, right? That Windows agent installing that machine is protecting the machine immediately. And we also, of course, told this Palo Alto firewall, this FortiGate, about something that they didn't know, which is this indicator of compromise to make a good response. So highlights, we're able to tell the summary, we can track the situations, we can show the inactive response, we can tell you the amount of labels that have been affected, the relevance in the business, of course, and if multiple sightings start to appear regarding that phishing, we're gonna see them right here. More importantly, we're also gonna establish the behavioral element of it with attack patterns and conditions that could refer as beaconing, they could refer as successful or unsuccessful attempts, and a relationship with an external entity that can be resumed at a given time. This is important because attackers can deploy malware-less type of attacks or file-less attacks, and they, of course, use logic and they can set times. So this is really interesting that we can see this. The threat intelligence around this is really interesting as well. So let me just share that we have a threat intelligence engine, which is Multiverse. Multiverse comes from an acquisition that Lumu did. So we use that as our core engine, and as well as we provide it as a threat intelligence platform. Lumu here, Lumu Defender, and Lumu for MSPs also provide an ample capability to perform correlation from threat intelligence sources. We deploy more than 100 of them. We cross-reference them. So when you see threat intelligence, we make it transparent. We make it quick to understand. We tell you the triggers, the relationships, the infrastructure. And you can see here that it's been developing over the weekend. Julian, I don't like this one bit because it's a recent campaign is under developing in the past days. So I can see those triggers here. I have precise information of the type of threat intelligence and how it's being used, from where it's being used. So I like this a lot. And we map that, of course, to the type of effort. So we understand what they're trying to achieve. The adversary is trying to do this first phase between reconnaissance and initial access, okay? Well, if I keep analyzing, I'm moving to time here, and I see that 11 minutes later, there's another attempt. So we see another phishing domain here. Again, marketing laptop. This comes from visibility. I'm receiving this log from a firewall as well with the virtual appliance. So the flexibility of our deployment strategy is paying off here. We immediately responded as well with the firewall. Again, highlight, really quick way to understand and respond. We have one of the widest support for integrations out of the box in the market. This makes it easy for our customers to generate quick value with their deployed stack. So I'm not liking this. I'm seeing that they kept attempting and that marketing is under this condition that they're receiving these phishing emails, and they typically share, right, the emails because they're working with campaigns, they're working with different notions of activities. And we see that a couple of hours later, I see a malware and phishing type of action in the same label, administrative. Let me take a look at this. I'm seeing that there's a malware that's being used in this, and I see 2 contacts. So what is interesting is that I can expand on those contacts, and I see 2 different conditions on 2 different moments, right? So it's reattempting to perform that contact, and I see some type of login request here on. So if I'm inclined to have more details, I can just click here. It provides me with raw information about how this request is happening, why it's happening, when it was detected, how many times, how many packets. So for the ones that require a little bit more telemetry, it's right there. We don't make it difficult. We make it really direct. And again, the threat intelligence is pointing me now to evolution or this is a changing scenario. So this shows exactly how our multiverse engine here with the threat intelligence and the different sources that we see are able to provide a different glimpse. So we're seeing it changing hour by hour, day by day on the conditions. So this is really important because it allows us to understand the use of those and the movement in infrastructure of the attacker. So really cool. So if I move a little bit faster, a couple of hours later, right, or even at the beginning, I'm seeing an unusual login. This already comes back to what Julian was explaining. Let me take a look at this because this is one of our novelties. So unusually high number of logins for an admin user. What is this? Unusual logins. Customers, for example, customers that already had the agent collector in their Active Directory developed, they were starting to see different of activities, and they used to monitor their assets with the directory services, right? But now that agent that we can put in the directory services is able to have more capability. It updates automatically, and now we're providing with the capability to follow identity interactions. This is really cool because you're able to understand if administrative accounts or high privilege accounts are performing this unusual type of activity. For example, real cases are like unusual hours, anomaly in the behavior of those logins, suspicious amount of logins using such accounts. You can spot automations, right? Real cases go for deployed systems that are deprecated or that were left there with automations that are trying to use these privileged accounts. So these present themselves as latent vulnerabilities in your environment. So this capability that they're providing here helps with environment and security hygiene as well. We're able to spot that behavior, and there's a reason here of the incident, so we're presenting this in a clear way to understand. The alert was triggered because admin user has been doing this high rate of logins. This could indicate a specific type of high security risk. We're seeing the unusual events. We're seeing the amount of endpoints that are involved and how many of them. And we map that in a heat map. I love this because this provides an immediate way to understand cadence. This provides a way to understand how efforts are being directed and when. The average of logins per day, the amount of them, the time, so we can track that. Not only we do that, but we can do that in different, of course, spaces of time. We're not doing just a point detection. We're tracking behavior. And we're associating this behavior with other conditions, as you can see. So I see the endpoint. It's telling me, oh my God, and here we see, Julian, this is W11 marketing GL. So another marketing machine is not only that laptop. We're seeing a progression here, behavior regarding these conditions. So what is this machine at that time of night doing these initial logins? And we saw that phishing attempt. We saw a phishing that is associated with a developing malware scenario. So, and it's interesting that you can see that we were able to block those conditions. But imagine a scenario that doesn't have those blocks implemented, that doesn't have tools, or these efforts can be bypassing the typical points of control, right? There's different level of inequalities in EDRs, and the attackers are always evolving their techniques. So we can spot this, we can understand, and we can even compare with different moments and different conditions, right? So let's go back here, and we can see this and keep tracking a little bit. So at the moment that we understand that we have an unusual login, and we follow up in the hours, we see that February 24, this makes it easier for me to understand that there is a progression, right? And now they're trying to log into another computer. So this is typically what they would do, right? They from the attacker point of view, they're trying to seek a higher importance type of machine. So let me see what's happening here. Two contexts, one endpoint. And this confirms what we were looking at, right? The system is doing the threat hunting for me automatically. This is great. We're seeing how Lumu is carrying on step by step. right? And in this case, we're seeing even in a chronologic progression, right? So we're seeing marketing GL, again, with two contexts. And here we can see that it changed the infrastructure. So the attacker is moving, but we see a pattern in that request, right? We see that same type of request here in the URL, but he's moving the infrastructure. And they do that to be evasive, right? So they generate new subdomains. They try to move the IP. They do that. This is why it's so important to have that many threat intelligence sources and the correlation that we do. Okay, so we confirm and we see a development super recent. We see those changing few hours ago. So we're actively tracking what's happening, and we can see that they keep doing that. We're going to continue here, and we see that. So a few hours later, past midnight, they keep doing that, and now we have something different because we're seeing command and control. So command and control, and we see malware, and it's Luma Stealer. This is a known malware campaign. What's important here, we're confirming that that machine, in fact, is infected with that campaign. This allows me to already confirm my suspicions, but we move in time, and now we're seeing network scans. So this goes back to the news that Julian was saying. Now we're seeing scanning and reconnaissance. Who is scanning and why? So that machine, the 23, the marketing machine, now is trying to find other machines, the .18. So this is typical. This is the progression. They're going to try to find new hosts, more important hosts, and go towards that. So that, well, tells about those unusual logins and what they're going to try to actually do. This is relevant behavior. We're starting to see lateral movement. Yeah. So when we see this movement, it tells us not only about intention, but about the use of common admin tools, valid tools. This is another tendency that we're seeing in the environment, not only in this environment, but across the spectrum of threats. Malicious actors, now they know that detection can change from day to day, so they use tools that are known, that are valid in the OS, right? They combine this with known techniques that are poorly documented, and they abuse those tools to move. So the scanning, now we can see that minutes later, it transforms in a network brute force. So Julian's explanation is taking place here. We're seeing that this is, they're now being serious. They are targeting the understanding and the abuse of the protocol and the services. This is, we can see here RDP and SSH, right? They're specific known ports and from that machine. So what we're seeing here is that the machine .18 is being active. So we saw the movement. It's progressing across those machines. And one of the interesting things here is that they are moving towards higher importance machines. That's part of the objective. That's part of the condition. But this provides good detail. We're seeing the amount of packets. We're seeing the amount of attempts, the rate of attempts per second. We summarize the attempt, which means that we're correlating data across different conditions along time and along hosts. So you're able to download the evidence. The evidence will show you the detailed telemetry of those attempts. We provide you with a reference on the response playbook. And clearly, you see that in each of these incidents, our mapping to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is a common way to understand the techniques, tactics, and procedures that attackers employ, not only across the different campaigns of attack, but how they use it in a point type of condition. We have seen that the credential access has been established, the lateral movement. This tells me at some point that phishing not only could have deployed a special type of file as malware, right, but could also be the condition that the user was compromised in a fake login web page. Phishing is very efficient, right? So when we do this, we understand that it is moving silently. At the same time, it's using known tools, known conditions. And now we saw that from the machine .23, they went to .18. The .18 started to do other stuff, and now .18 is scanning other machines. So from 18 now to 42. This is lateral mover progression. I know that 42 is a server in my environment, and we're following, see what? Malware Lumu stealer again. 4 contacts, other 2 endpoints, and this is the server from human resources. It becomes clear that we're able to track this lateral movement in this condition. Now we know that this important machine has got into their control. And we saw 42 now scanning, 42 now is doing brute force attack, and brute force, again, SSH, secure shell, remote desktop protocol against other machines. So we see, we time the effort. I don't like this one bit, Julian. Guys, this looks bad because the following condition is Luma stealer again, and now that HR server is infected with this malware. This has been a hard week for this environment. And more importantly, now we're seeing Tor node. This is the anonymizer technique that Julian was mentioning. This correlates for rogue VPNs that are being used to create extrusion of data. They created to, they're being used, even if they're normal services, right? They can be rogue services in the environment. They're being used to do the covert communications towards command and control, or towards exchange of data, towards extrusion of data, as I just mentioned. But we can see that, and we can see that that server and the marketing laptop across time are being subject to that technique by the attacker. So we're able to provide this important set of detections. We're moving in that direction, right? They're moving into incorporating more identity, more capabilities of seeing the behavior in the network, and to providing value back to that environment, right? To the security tools in that environment, because we have the response integrations like you saw. These little shields here show that we are responding. So that is something that our customers love, how we integrate and we bring value to their existing investments. And now, to finalize this, on the 24, we see time later, again, the timing, the attacks is important. Now, malicious actors, they can take over the environment, they can hide their activity all the way to the moment that they're ready. They can do data extraction, they steal your data, and then they could do, for example, a ransomware attack. This is Cobalt Strike here is telling us. Cobalt Strike is very dangerous. This is an implant type of threat. This came derived from a tool that was used for valid pen testing type of assessment. So, but its source code leaked and now is used as well in different conditions for malicious stealthy actions, for espionage and other things. So we're seeing here that there's an implant that is telling, right? This provides an external attack with capabilities to dominate the machine fully. So we see HR server is just done. It's beaconing, it's providing request and response of commands. They can tell anything in the environment. So we know this is bad. Finally, this goes back to another attempt. We see this is happening sequentially, so we can follow up with that 3 times. So we know that machine is under control, and now we see logging brute force. So this tells me that it's really bad, because now we see the evolution of this towards a domain controller. So high volume of logging failures, and we're seeing the holistic approach here in across time, which is really important. There can be another threat in this environment as well. This is a demo environment that we have, so we have different type of demos. So 6 brute force attempts, 1 target user, this is an admin user, of course, 4 attacker sources, and the summarization of failed login attempts. We can see that their marketing machine, right, was already targeting the admin, as we saw against the domain, okay? On the 24, we see the progression, another user, admin domain user here. We can download this attempt. this is what Julian was explaining at this moment, right? Full access in the environment. Julian, I think that we reach a moment in this chain of attack that is pretty obvious because now the rest is, look, hours later is Mimikatz. This is a ransomware type of attack. The domain has fallen. So this is the domain controller, this right foreseeable after seeing the previous movement. But we were able to tell, not only were we able to tell, this is clearly easy to understand in the details of the incident. Let me get out of this point of view.
And we were able to essentially follow the entire chain of attack through Lumu, from the phishing attack through to command and control, lateral movement, all of that. Okay, very fascinating. Thank you so much for showing us that, Ricardo.
Yeah.
I think in the last minute or so before we move on to the Q&A session, could you perhaps show us the new audit logs that we just instituted in the portal?
This is really cool, and it's a great point, because one of the things that we do with Lumu is not only see all of this metadata and do all of these detections, we're able to hold that metadata that has been analyzed for 2 years. And that's a feature that is embedded in our solution. It's not an extra that you need to an extra license. So we're able to hold those traffic logs, so you're able to see telemetry regarding your environment, right? You can feed it. This can help you with savings and costs and compose your strategy of data retention and compliance. But we're now also able to do, right, in settings, we're able to have now audit activity regarding the administrator and the analyst. We're able to show when you provide a login activity, right, how you did that, the actions that you perform, right? So this is important because it shows the diligence on the environment, is provide the overarching understanding and compliance around who is managing and the due diligence, okay?
Okay, perfect. Is there anything else you want to show us before we go on to the Q&A section?
I just want to call back to the attention that everything that we saw here is the idea was to portray this chain of events, but you can see activities summarized in a very simple way here in our portal. The idea was to take you guys through this ride to understand the importance of having this identity information, this capability to understand lateral movement. So we can see the events here. It tells you right away, right? This is easy to click, easy to understand the compromised context. It provides you with easy to view. So you're back in track and you can do that. You can see the distribution of that activity in the environment as well. And more importantly, we provide a really high-level view about analytics and understanding. You can see the behavior in the environment. You can see the anomalies in the environment. We can follow the domain resolution anomalies. You can see it right here. It's simple. The portal presents you with all of the information at a glance. And I'm able to finalize this saying thank you for your time, right? And Julian, your way now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ricardo. So we just have 5 questions at the moment in the Q&A, and I think we should be able to get through all of them pretty easily. If anyone has any other questions you want to add in the meantime, go ahead and we will address them. So the first question we have here is, wouldn't I notice this activity on my EDR and my firewall?
Well, this is really interesting. And guys, there's a reason why we keep having malware attacks and advanced threats nowadays, even with the EDRs, because there are conditions where EDRs can be bypassed. There are techniques that fly low under the radar. There are techniques that are based in not in malware, they're fileless. So this can happen. You can have visibility in the EDR for different stages as well, but we complement that. We provide not only visibility, we provide an overarching approach because we don't depend on seeing the file. We don't depend on doing deobfuscation. We don't depend, and deobfuscation is like unscramble what the attacker did to hide their attempt. So we're immune to those conditions. It's really useful because Lumu is providing this, right? This continuous capability to understand how you're going to connect. At the end of the day, they will have to connect. The network doesn't lie at that point, right? The endpoint can be full. The actions in the endpoint can be erased across time, which is also a technique of the attacker. So we provide this not only real time, but we provide more intelligence as well. This is important. We're overreaching more than 100 threat intelligence sources in real time. That doesn't fit inside a firewall. That doesn't fit inside a SIEM. That doesn't fit inside in these terms of an EDR. So we're holding their back, right? We're covering the steps.
All right, the next question I have here is from Luciano Lager. Lumu is considered a SOC-less module for a SOC team, right? I mean, the incidents have evolved for the same system and do the hunting at the same time. So all the parameters indicate that the job is done. I think we also need to like just mention that the demo environment we're dealing with, we've basically allowed this attack to keep going so you can get visibility into how an attack would evolve and how you can see every single one of those steps. But is there anything else you want to add there, Ricardo?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point and question. I think that your perception is very interesting. So yeah, it's type of a SOC-less approach. Not only we're providing an automation, right? We're doing this continuous assessment. We're improving that assessment. We're seeing changes and we can track changes in threat intelligence and we can refer immediately. That provides you with direct information about the compromise, but you also have visibility in that EDR and other tools. So what we can do, not only we can respond immediately and fast and share that information. If you take a look at the surface of the OS, you might have further details there. That is the job of an EDR. You can complement your overview, you can complement your understanding there, but you already took action, you already detected the situation, you're already in a condition that you understand the impact and conditions, right? And you're doing that in a scenario where you're complementing and you're not pushing out other solutions. That provides not only better conditions, that provides an effort that is scalable because you don't have this alert overload. You saw how we approach this. This is a realistic approach, right? And you have a condition that you partner with those EDRs and other tools. That is very relevant. They can detect. But the SOC-less approach allows you to provide an indicator of performance at the security level. You're communicating things that normally takes time. There's a dwell time to understand when to respond, how to detect, the decisions that you need to make. We're shortening that. And not only we're doing that, we're automating it, okay?
And then there's also the automation of the incident management itself. So the Lumu, if you have Lumu Autopilot, it will basically determine whether an incident should be closed or muted or escalated based on the responses that have already been enacted.
That is a
The next
great
question,
point, right? Brilliant. The autopilot does that, and we're documenting the process, right? This interface is built following NIST guidelines and other ones. So you're already doing work that aligns with best practices in the industry.
Right, the next question here is from Sean. More layers and visibility are always good. Sooner or later, everything fails. What's your plan when one of those layers fails? That's where Lumu Defender provides value, low impact visibility across the endpoint, network, DNS, email, etc., and response. I think the question answered itself there.
Yeah, it kind of does. One point to that is that an environment that might have some integrated type of solution, that doesn't mean that it's ready to perform response perfectly, right? Instant response is something that has different levels of complexity and relies in an organized way as well. So one thing that is interesting is not that you're layering up the capabilities, it's the way that we're doing that as a process, right? We're not introducing complexity into that process. We're able to help you do that. So we're accelerating maturity with you. We're bringing you we're enabling you with better security, right? We're enabling you to do a task that is highly repetitive, is highly complex. We're not gluing you to a screen to do that. And we are providing an overlay in intelligence and detection capabilities that follow what's happening, not only internally and externally. So that is kind of important. It's not only because we're laying or something is going to fail, but it's how you respond. And what Lumu, above all, enables you is to notice and do the response. In difference to other MDR type of services, right? Or other tools that you need to kind of take this decision making. So we accelerate that. And that is what you need to show internally in your environment to keep securing not only the importance, the support of the stakeholders and the budget as well.
Okay, next question I have is from Luciano again. It's asking, what about living off the land detections? Is it already covered by the illumination process?
This is really interesting. We are looking at the environment. We are following the environment in those conditions. The environment will have to communicate. If you notice the living of the land type of techniques or law beams, like they're called, they're using documented and undocumented capabilities of those executables that are built into the OS and are well known to perform something that people didn't expect to do that way, which is communicate externally to the network. Most of them are used to do that, to try to do some PowerShell in an obfuscated way, to use a task scheduler or whatever other tool to do that. So when we do that, we're able to detect those communications with the malicious infrastructures because they're not going to do it just internally, right? And when they do the lateral movement, we show examples of the RDP sessions, SSA sessions, and other type of condition. And by the way, this is a zone of developing that we are enhancing, right? Which is really interesting. We're giving more power to our agents, more power to the visibility of these techniques. Those are high value opportunities that we have to provide capability, right, in these new detections to our customers. Those are going to continue. There's a reason why they've been there, and Microsoft is not kind of removing that in other systems. What's important is to understand the outcome of that specific tool, right? When it uses that, it's going to use it as scramble. This will be difficult and EDR to see, but we will see because we're not dealing with that, okay? So there's that. I'm not trying to infer perfection. I'm saying that this is, in fact, why we were discussing that overlay capability, right? So we help the EDR in that case.
All right. So there are three more questions that I'd like to get through from our listeners. Next one is from Zachary. Does Lumu do anything to block or stop these attacks, or is that on the users to figure out with our firewall? Sounds like these attacks have already got in by the time Lumu gives us this information.
This is really interesting, right? So a twofold answer for you here. The first thing is that, yes, we do something about those attacks. We do the detection, right, in the incident, and we immediately orchestrate with automation based on an integrated, an integration that is configured with the, for example, the firewall, right? We share that indicator of compromise with the firewall in real time. So the firewall is able to use it in something called an EDL, right? A dynamic list, right? And then it enforces that type of defense. And you notice, right? If you see the request from inside, it's because it permeated the perimeter, permeated the firewall. Firewall cannot have, they're unable to have all of the threat intelligence in the world. They can have a subset. This is why we're doing this work. And there's another point. We're doing the internal monitoring that's continuously, right? So that is a good point. And the other side of that response is that this is why we have something like Multiverse as a threat intelligence engine and as a threat intelligence platform offering. Because Multiverse is a way to not only organize, curate, and help disseminate, right, external threat intelligence and amalgamation of threat intelligence sources in an organized way so you can put it into your different other type of tools. So there are organizations that are at that maturity level that they want to have different private and public sources of threat intelligence. They transform it, they curate, they want to integrate that with their processes, managed service provider, managed security service provider as well. So this is why Lumu made that investment in having its own engine in threat intelligence and having that approach as well in Defender and in Multiverse.
Well, one thing I want to add there is that typically that like firewall integration, the response is a matter of milliseconds. It's to the point that very often the website won't even resolve if it's blocked through that means. All right, the next question is from Sean again. At the moment, I believe that all Lumu data or tenants are in the US. Are there any plans or discussions about residency in other locations such as Canada or the US?
Lumu at this time is a global operations. We have operations in EMEA, in South America, in North America. Yeah, we can cover pretty much all of those markets. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, can you assemble the individual detections for a suspect machine into a kill chain progression to further surface suspected machine compromises quickly?
I think that we just did that, right? We just did that in that progression. We saw how the marketing machines were doing that, but we don't tie up that attack path detection. If you're inferring about attack path detection, we're not providing this glimpse. What we actually do is something around the relationship, right? We can show the relationships with the domains, with relationships with external environment. We do that in the analytics zone. But that is an interesting point. Another very interesting point that we do towards progression in understanding risk is we have something called Lumu Discover. Lumu Discover is able to help you map external attack surface, right? So we're able, through the scanning the domain, to the scanning the data, we're able to reveal the type of information that the attacker can get his hands on about your users, the logins, the passwords, right? The lost data, right? Or harvested
Compromised credentials.
data. Yeah, all of those type of issues. So we can show that as well. This is something that we have. It's called Lumu Discover. So when we unify that, and by the way, this discussion is what we call our SecOps architecture, right? We have Lumu Defender, we have Lumu Discover, we have Multiverse, and we have Defender with their archiving type of capability, right?
All right, and I'm going to ask just this one final question, just also because I'm curious about the answer to this. Are there any automated response that works with internal network devices, routers and switches, to turn off network ports or subnets in response to an active threat?
Definitely. Lumu, what I really like about Lumu is the amount of integrations that we have. Really, really competitive aspect of Lumu. Out of the box integration, customers integrations, open API to integrate, and we can do a lot of that. Let me give you an example with cloud environments. Lumu can obtain telemetry, monitor, and defend cloud environments, like AWS, Google, Azure. And one of the things that we can do is integrate with the VPC, right, and provide responses with the VPC. You can do that with other tools, with other controls, different types of conditions, firewalls, routing switches. So, and you have the liberty to also implement new things using our API, which exposes that capability. Yeah, and it's well documented, really well documented.
All right. I think that's all we have time for in terms of questions. Well, I think we've answered all the questions in any case. I'd like to thank everyone who attended and stuck through with the Q&A session today. And I'd like to also thank Ricardo Marquez, Technical Director, for his excellent demo and his expertise today. And Sonia, of course, for hosting this webinar. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to either email myself or Ricardo. Also, we have recorded this session and we will be sharing it with you, and you're free to share it with your colleagues or whoever you want. I think that's going to be it from my side. Anything from you, Ricardo?
No, thank you very much for your time, guys, and for your presence. Stay on the lookout for our next events. Go out and get a Lumu account. You can sign up for a Lumu account for free. The ones that don't have the Lumu account, please do that. So I appreciate your patience, and the questions were really good. Thank you very much. Julian, Thank you for leading this activity, and see you next time.
All right, thanks, guys. See you next time.